Hello everyone, welcome to News Today edition of 18th March. Myself Nilesh and I will be taking this session. Before we start today's session, let's see the headlines of the day. In today's session, we'll cover 3 main news, 1 pleasant news and 8 quick updates. In main news, first main news is about cryohydrological hazards linked to deglaciation in Himalayas as per the ISRO. Then second main news is about reducing methane emissions from landfills, the potential of biocover systems report released, right? And third main news is about immunization for all in India, right? In place in news, we will cover Armenia. So without wasting any time, let's dive into first main news of the day. The first main news of the day is about cryohydrological hazard linked to deglaciation in Himalayas as per stated by the ISRO. So in this news we will see what cryohydrological hazards are, what deglaciation is and what is the impact of it on the Himalayas, right? This becomes very important for GS paper 1, that is critical geographical features including water bodies and ice caps. And I have given you one question. We will solve and try to get the answer for this question. This is the previous year question asked by the UPSC. The question is about how does the cryosphere affect the global climate, right? So let's dive into the development. What is the development? So the recent study by the ISRO scientists revealed that the Dharali village, that is in Uttarakhand, and it was affected by the flash flood in 2025, was not triggered by the cloudburst or the glacial lake outburst floods. Cloudburst or the glacial lake outburst floods, but by the sudden collapse of an exposed ice patch. Here we will see what is the cloudburst. So as per the IMD, if a small area gets more than 100 millimeter of the rain within an hour, that event is called as cloudburst, which means the huge amount of rain within the small amount of time. That is the definition of cloudburst. And because of the cloudburst, because there will be a huge water, there can be a possibility of the flash floods, right? But the flood in 2025 was not linked to the cloudburst. Then what is the glacial lake outburst floods? So please understand what are the glacial lakes. So glacial lakes are the lakes which forms around the glaciers, in the glacier, before the glacier, after the glacier, right? So glacier lakes are the lakes which are formed around the glacier because of the water which is coming from the glacier which get deposited, right? And to understand, please see this diagram. So this is the sediments, right? And this is the glacier, this is the ice, right, of the glacier, and this is the mountainous region, and this area will have the lake because of the accumulation of the water which is coming from the glacier, right? And at some point of time this sediment will be broken and all this water will be gushed towards the downward side and it will bring the floods in the downstream. So this is the glacial lake outburst floods, right? But that was not linked to that also. So it was linked to what? A ice patch. And what is the ice patch? So the ice patch, it is a perennial mass of the surface snow, fern and the basal ice that lacks the internal deformation or the active flow distinguish it from the true glacier, right? So it is not part of the true glacier and it will be a patch, right? And that is why it becomes very dangerous. So this ice patch was located within the navigation zone of the Srikanta glacier, right? So please remember that the Srikanta glacier is situated in the Uttarakhand, right? And we will see what is the navigation zone. So what is the navigation zone? So navigation is the progressive erosion of the ground beneath and around the snowbank. So it is the progressive erosion of the ground beneath the snowbank and primarily driven by the alternate freeze thaw cycles. So what happens? So this ground beneath the snowbank actually gets frozen in the winters, and it will be having the water flowing over it in the summers. So because of this freeze and thaw cycles, there will be a progressive erosion, right? And that is called as the navigation. So this is the concept of the navigation. And please understand, the appearance of the exposed ice patches in the satellite imagery act as an early warning signal of the heightened flash flood risk. So please remember that because of the these observation of the ice patches, we can actually have the early warning for the upcoming disasters such as flash flood in the 2025. So this is about the development, right? Now we'll see what is the cryosphere and what are the importance of the cryosphere. So what is the cryosphere? What is the cryosphere? So it coming from the Greek word, right? And cryos in the Greek means the cold, right? So which means the area or the ice which is very cold, right? So it is the ice cold, right? So the area of the earth which is generally have the ice cover is called as the cryosphere, right? And cryosphere is generally have the 5 distinct geological features such as ice sheets, then glaciers, right? Then there are permafrost, then sea ice and ocean ice, right? These are the 5 geographical features where we generally see the cryosphere. We have the ice in our freezer also. Is that part of the cryosphere? The answer is no. Why? Because it is not the part of geographical feature of earth, right? That is why the ice in your freezer is not part of the cryosphere, right? So this is about it. What are the importance of the cryosphere for the humans? What is the importance? The firstly, the ice cap or the ice in the earth is actually having the fresh water around 70%. That is the first thing. So it have the largest source of the fresh water, right? That is the one thing. Secondly, the cryosphere is very important for climate change. How it is important for the climate change? Firstly, it have the albedo effect. What is the albedo effect? So when sunlight comes on the earth, it get refracted back by the earth or by the various elements of the earth, and the ice have the highest albedo effect, and because it is reflecting largest amount of energy back in the space, the heating effect due to the energy of the sun becomes reduced, right? That is the another important. Then thirdly, in permafrost such as Arctic region, there is a trapping of the methane CH4 for hundred of years, and because that methane is trapped, it is not in the atmosphere, and because it is not in atmosphere, it is not hitting the air, and the climate change is not intensified because lot of methane is trapped in the permafrost in the Arctic, right? So that is also an important point. Then there is water security. Water security, because there are glaciers in the Himalayas, there are perennial rivers flowing in the northern India, and it is the source of fresh water for the large amount of population of the India, right? That is also a very important point. Then how it is also important? It is also important because it is helping reducing the ocean water rise or the sea water rise, because huge amount of water is actually stored in the form of ice, and that is why the ocean water rise or the sea rise is limited. So this is how these cryosphere are very important for human geography, and it have the various impacts on the climate change also. So please remember this fact. Now we'll see the various causes of increase in the Himalayan disaster. What are the various causes? The first is the climate change, and how climate change is affecting. So it is accelerating the glacier thinning, altered precipitation and rising temperatures, reducing the insulation, seasonal slow, and cover that typically protects the underlying ice, right? So there is change in the precipitation, that is the rain. Then there is intensifying of the heat, and that is actually intensifying the melting of the ice, and the ice is getting thin, and the albedo effect is also reducing, right? So these are the some of the things, and climate change is actually intensifying. Secondly, thermal and mechanical destabilization. What does it mean? So the exposed ice respond to rapidly to the temperature fluctuations and minor changes, making it highly susceptible to melting, fragmentation and sudden gravitational collapse. So this ice become very susceptible, and the glaciers can release the water or the ice very suddenly, and when these ice sheets are coming from the height to the lower side, they will bring various debris, various rocks with them, and this actually intensifies the flash floods, as we already seen in the last year, right? So that is also one of the reason, and the climate change is actually intensifying the calamities in the nature. These are the some of the things, right? So this is the various causes for increasing the Himalayan disaster, and Himalayas are actually the young mountains, so there will be always the activity of the earthquake. That is the one point, right? So these are the some of the things. Now we'll see various effects of the deglaciation in Himalayas, because glaciers are actually withdrawing or they are melting very fast. So what are the effects of the deglaciation? The first is the cascading cryohydrological hazards. As we already discussed, the sudden release of the fragmented ice, meltwater and the intense debris can create the short duration high velocity surges, and which can actually lead to the various disasters such as quick floods, flash floods, as we already discussed, right? Then secondly, topographical amplification. What is the topographical amplification? So in steep confined Himalayas valleys, even a small volume of collapsed ice translate into massive gravitational potential energy and producing high erosive debris laden floods, right? So the topography is very steep in Himalayas, and what happens if the ice on this side actually comes down, so it will bring the various debris and various material, mud and all those things with it, as we already discussed. That is the point given here. And then socio-economical destruction. So these multi-phase hazard lead to the massive channel widening, then structural destruction and settlements, and threat to the religious transit hubs, lowland communities, and hydropower security, right? So it have the large impact, such as there are various dams in the Himalayas. They can be impacted because of the such flash flood and the huge flow of the water. Then there is challenge to the religious transit hubs. Various important religious hubs are there in Himalayas, like such as Vaishnav Devi and other things, right? And there are threat to the lowland communities because there can be always hazard of the flash floods or even the various other activities such as cloudburst. So these are the various effects of the deglaciation in the Himalayas, right? Now we will see the previous year question. As we have already given the one PYQ, that is, how does the cryosphere affect the global climate? Haven't we discussed this point? We have already discussed how cryosphere is actually affecting the global climate. You have to write those points only. You can also write about the ocean currents and then biodiversity. So you can write those points also, like such as krill population in the Antarctica and all those points, right? That is the one thing. Then see this second question. How do the melting of the Arctic ice and glaciers of the Antarctica differently affect the weather patterns and human activities on the earth? So you have to write various points. We have already discussed how the melting of the Arctic is affecting. So it is affecting the climate such as heat waves, right? Heat waves in USA and other regions. Then there is rise in sea water, then biodiversity. All these points you can write, and similar way you can write about the Antarctic, such as ocean currents, then again biodiversity, right? So such kind of points you can write here and give the specific example related to it. So this is all about the first main news of the day. Now we'll see the second main news of the day. So second main news of the day is about a report, and the name of the report is reducing the methane emissions from the landfills, the potential of the biocover systems, right? So we'll see what is the biocover in this report and about the methane in general, right? So methane is very important because UPSC have asked the question related to methane emissions, and we will see what are its sources and all those things which are relevant for the examination. So don't worry. This topic is very important for GS paper 3, that is the conservation, environmental pollution and the degradation, right? So let's dive into the news. So what is the development? So development, as we already discussed, this report is released by the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. We'll see about this coalition in detail in the later course of discussion. But this report is actually highlighting the simple, relatively affordable and the locally adaptable solutions like methane mitigation oxidation covers, such as biocovers, can effectively mitigate the landfill methane emissions while improving the air quality and public health. So it is talking about how the simple methods such as the using the bacteria which can actually disintegrate methane can be used to reduce the methane emission in the air, right? So this is the simple definition of the biocovers. So biocover is the microbial system which uses the naturally occurring bacteria to oxidize methane into the less harmful carbon dioxide and the water. So generally in the 10 to 15 years, the methane is naturally converted into carbon dioxide. But because of this bacteria, this process is hastened and it will help to actually transform methane into the carbon dioxide very fastly and reducing the its potential of the uh, climate change, right? So this is the methane is CH4, and when it actually reacts with the oxygen, what happens? It turns into CO2 plus water. So this is the reaction. Please remember this reaction, and this is the reaction actually happens in the nature, and the bacteria actually fasten this kind of reaction. So this is basically about it, and it is capable of mitigating up to 50% of the methane generation over the 100 years of the period. So climate change potential of the methane can be reduced up to 50% in the landfills. And what are the landfills? Landfills are the, as we already know, where generally dump yards are situated, right? So this is about it. Now we'll see about the methane and various sources of methane which are very relevant for our examination. So methane is CH4, and it is very important a global warming effect, and India is the third largest emitter of the methane. And who are the first and second? China and USA. So India is the third largest emitter of the methane. Methane is also very important. Please remember that methane is the part of the natural gas, as there is shortage of natural gas in India because of there is war in the West Asia and the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, and that natural gas actually have methane. Almost 80 to 95% of the methane is there in the natural gas. Please remember that. So key component of the natural gas is methane, and in LPG there are other gases such as butane, isobutane, propane, isobutane. So LPG and natural gas are the different, and natural gas have the majority of the methane. That is the important fact. Please remember this fact, very important, right? Then what are the various sources of methane? The important source is agriculture. So wherever there is anaerobic reaction, and what is the anaerobic reaction? So anaerobic reaction where there is lack of oxygen, so methane is produced, such as rice fields, then livestock such as cattle farming. All those are the important source of the methane. Please remember this fact. And then there are peatlands. Those are naturally actually releasing the methane. That is also very important. Now then there are industries such as burning of waste, residues, then fertilizer industry. All those are actually emitting the methane. Methane is very important for the production of fertilizers, then methanol, ammonia. So it is very important for production of these gases and these components and these chemical products, and in the process it is also getting emitted into the environment, right? Then there is stubble burning in the northern India particularly, it also emitting the large amount of methane in the air. So this is all about its sources and its importance. Now we'll see the landfill emissions, and methane is important of that. So landfills are one of the world's largest and fastest growing sources of methane, and responsible for around 11% of the all human made emissions, right? Then methane is powerful greenhouse gas, as we already discussed, has the high global warming potential, that is around 28% to 48% times higher than the carbon dioxide. And what are the its implications? So long term emissions. So biodegradation of the organic waste can typically take 2 through 3 decades, with the methane emissions continuing for up to 100 years at the landfill sites. So it is actually elongating the life cycle of the methane emissions, right? Then what are the risks? So methane becomes explosive at the concentration of the 4.4% to around 16%, and as we already saw that LNG actually have the methane in it, and when such large or the high concentration in the air, which can trigger the prolonged fire, because this fire will be prolonged because there will be always supply of the methane from the landfill, right? And landfill gas contains the toxic trace components such as volatile organic compounds, hydrogen sulfides, and solvents that causes the environmental and human health crisis. So volatile organic compounds can lead to the ozone pollution in the lower atmosphere. So these are the some of the risk of the methane emission in the lower atmosphere because of the landfills, right? Now we'll see about the climate and clean air coalition. So it is the voluntary partnership of over 200 governments including India and intergovernmental organization, businesses, scientific institutions, and civil society organization. Please remember that what is important for us is that India is the part of this voluntary partnership, right? Then where its secretariat is, so it is hosted by the United Nations Environmental Program, and it is in Paris, France. And what is the aim of the climate and clean air coalition? So aim is to protect the climate and improving the air quality by reducing the short-lived super pollutants such as methane, black carbon, tropospheric ozone, and the HFCs, right? Hydrofluorocarbons. And what are the targets? So the target is to achieve global reduction of at least 40% of the methane by 2030 compared to the 2010 levels, and up to 70% of the black carbon by 2030 relative to the 2010, and around 99.5% of the HFCs by 2050 compared to the 2010 levels. So please remember this target also. You can code these targets in your answer, right? So this is about the correlation. Now we'll see the previous year question asked related to methane, right? So this is the first question. Please see the statement related to deposit of the methane hydrates, right? And firstly, global warming might trigger the release of the methane gas from these deposits. Large deposits of the methane hydrates are found in the Arctic tundra and under the sea floor, and methane is in atmosphere oxidizes to carbon dioxide after the decade or two. Haven't we discussed this third statement? So it is the true. Then we actually discuss about the trapping of the CH4 by the permafrost in the Arctic and the ocean floors, right? So this trapping is called as the methane hydrates, right? And it is true. So first statement is also true, second statement is also true. The answer is D, 1, 2, and 3, right? So it was very easy question if you know the concept of it, right? Now we'll see the another question. Climate change is a global problem. How India will be affected by the climate change? How Himalayan and coastal state of India will be affected by the climate change? So there are various, this is how India will be affected by the climate change, how Himalayan and coastal part of the India will be affected by the climate change. So you have to write about the changes in agriculture, rainfall pattern, then there will be increase in the disaster related to climate change and all those points, right? Then in the coastal area there will be sea level rise and there will be impact on the fishermen communities. There will be more intensifying of the cyclones such as tropical cyclones and even temperate cyclones also. So all these points you can write, right? So this is about this. Please understand, in temperate cyclone, this year there was flood in Punjab and other areas, and in tropical cyclones there are always issue of tropical cyclones in the Bay of Bengal, right? So you can write such kind of examples also, right? So these are the two questions related to it. Then there is another question, and this question is about the methane. Consider the following: carbon monoxide, methane, ozone, and the sulfur dioxide. Which of the above are released into atmosphere due to the burning of the crop biomass residue? And the answer is D, all of above, right? So this is about the previous year question related to it. Now we'll see the next main article, and the next main news is about towards the immunization for all in India. And this topic is very important for GS paper 3, that is conservation and sustainable development, right, in the healthcare sector. So it is also important for GS paper 1 and GS paper 2, that is health and related issues. So without wasting any time, let's see the development. What is the development? So India is moving towards the universal immunization for its population through the vaccination under the universal immunization program. So this is the development. Now we'll see important aspect of it, and we'll see what is the universal immunization program is all about. So it was launched in 1985 by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and its objective, as stated, to rapidly increase the immunization coverage, establishing the reliable cold chain system, and achieve the self-sufficiency in the vaccine production. So cold chain is very important because these vaccines are needed to store in the cold environment, right? So that is why cold chain systems are very important. And what are the disease coverage? So it covers the 12 diseases, 12 life threatening diseases. And which are those diseases? Such as diarrhea, then polio, then tetanus, then TB, then hepatitis B, then measles, rubella, etc., right? And there is Mission Indradhanush. And what is Mission Indradhanush? So it is launched in 2015 to reach children and the pregnant women who are unvaccinated or partially vaccinated, following it with the intensified Mission Indradhanush mission with the greater focus on the urban areas, right? So this is the Mission Indradhanush. Please remember that there is another Indradhanush plan for the banks. So we will see that, but that is different than the Mission Indradhanush. These missions aim to achieve over 90% of the full immunization coverage under the universal immunization program by strengthening the routine immunization services and targeting the hard to reach population. So as we already discussed, there is Indradhanush plan for the banks revival. What is the Indradhanush plan? So it have various component A, B, C, D, E, F and G. So there is this, and what is this? Firstly, appointment. So there will be autonomy in the appointments. Then there was Bank Board Bureau, right? So Bank Board Bureau was actually not functional from the 2022, and there is another institution. Please write the name of the institution which is there and replace the Bank Board Bureau in 2022. Then there is capitalization. So after the Basel 3, there was higher need of the capitalization, and government have infused the money into the banks. Then there is de-stressing from NPAs, non-performing assets, right? So that was the one of the. Then there is efficiency, right? So there is efficiency, that is also one of the very important aspect of it. Then there is governance, and then these are the some of the aspect of the bank related Indradhanush pan, right? So please remember this. Then there is autonomy in the function. So these are the various aspects of the Indradhanush plan which is related to banks, and mission Indradhanush is related to immunization. So this is about the universal immunization program. Now we'll see the digital backbone of this immunization program. The first is the UWIN. And what is the UWIN? It is the digital app to help the people to find the vaccination centers near their residence, manage vaccination appointments at the health facilities, and maintain the vaccination records. So that is the UWIN. Then there is electronic vaccine intelligence network, that is EWIN, and it is the state of art software platform that tracks vaccine stocks, levels, and storage temperatures in the real time at multiple locations across the country. So this is about the digital backbone of the immunization program in India. Now we'll see the achievements by the India. And what are the achievements? So there are various disease eradication because of the immunization. So India have successfully eradicated smallpox in 1977. Then yawns. So it is basically disease, bacterial disease of the skin, bones, and other tissues. And India is the first country in the world to eliminate the yawns. Please remember this fact. Then maternal and neonatal tetanus, and then polio in 2014, right? Then there is leprosy also in 2005. So these are the some of the achievements of the India. Then full immunization coverage, so increase from 62% in 2015 to around 99% as of January 2026, and drop in zero dose children from 0.11 in 2023 to 0.06% in 2024, right? So zero dose children are defined as those that lack the access to or never had the routine immunization services, right? As the name suggests, it is very clear. Then global suppliers. So India is world's largest vaccine producer, supplying approximately 60% of the world's vaccine. India is called as the world pharmacy, and very aptly so, right? So these are the some of the achievements under the universal immunization program. Now we'll see the question related to it. The question is, Mission Indradhanush launched by the government of India pertains to very easy immunization of the children and the pregnant women, right? So A was the answer. This is about the main news of the day. Now we'll see the second question related to it. See this question: in the context of vaccine manufactured or prevent COVID-19 pandemic, consider the following statement. The Serum Institute of India produced the COVID-19 vaccine named Covishield using the mRNA platform. No. So it have taken the trace from the chimpanzee. So this is not true. So first statement is wrong. Sputnik V vaccine is manufactured using the vector-based platform, that is correct. And Covaxin is inactivated pathogen-based vaccine, that is also correct. So answer is B, that is 2 and 3, right? Now we will see the next question. What is the next question? What is the importance of using the pneumococcal conjugate vaccines in India? So please see this third statement. These vaccines have no side effects and cause no allergic reaction. Any medicine can have the side effects and can cause reaction. So C and D are eliminated. See this second statement. Dependence on the antibiotics that are not effective against the drug resistant bacteria can be reduced. That is true. So answer is B, because A is also true, that these vaccines are effective against the pneumonia as well as meningitis and sepsis, right? So this is all about the third main news. Now we'll see the pleasant news, and pleasant news for the day is Armenia and capital is Yerevan. What is the development? So development is India have evacuated around 550 of its national from the Iran through the Armenia, because Armenia is one of the India's very close partner, right? Now we'll see the political boundaries of Armenia. So what is the location? So it is the landlocked country of the West Asia. Please see, this is Armenia, but it is not connected to any sea or ocean, right? And bordering countries, so it is bordered by the Georgia, Azerbaijan, Iran, and then Turkey. So when you have to remember the border, you can make the mnemonic also, that is Gati, that is Georgia, Azerbaijan, Turkey and Iran, right? So the mnemonic is Turkey, right? And the region of Nagorno-Karabakh is disputed between the Armenia and Azerbaijan. So here is the region, that is the Nagorno and Karabakh, and there was war going on between Azerbaijan and Armenia related to Nagorno-Karabakh control, right? So please remember this fact also. UPSC generally asks the conflict areas in the news. So Nagorno-Karabakh is very important in that aspect. And what are the geographical features? So it is the part of Caucasus region. And what is the highest peak? So highest peak is Mount Aragat, that is Alaghez. And what are the important river? So important river is Aras river. And why it is very important? Because it flows eastward, forming the international boundary between Armenia and Azerbaijan on the north and Turkey and Iran on the south. So almost all the boundaries are made by this Aras river, right? Only the Georgia is not bordered by it. So this is the important development. Now we'll see the quick updates of the day. So first quick update is about the maternity leave. What is the development? So Supreme Court held that Section 60 subclause 4 of the Social Security Act of 2020, which allows maternity benefits to the adoptive mother only if adopted children is less than 3 months of the age, that is unconstitutional. The Supreme Court said if the mother is adopting the children, there should not be a age limit of any, because there should be a development of bond between the mother and children, right? So it have been unconstitutional. And Social Security Code of 2020 merges 9 existing Social Security Acts, including the Maternity Benefit Act of 1961. So please remember this fact also. Now we'll see the key observation of the Supreme Court. So Supreme Court said that adoptive mothers are entitled to 12 weeks leave irrespective of the children's age. That is very important. Then right of reproductive autonomy is not confined to the biological act of giving the birth, but adoption is an equal exercise of the right to reproductive and decisional autonomy under the Article 21 of the Constitution. So ambit of the Constitution, Constitutional Article 21 have been widened, right? So Article 21's ambit have been widened in another aspect also, such as environmental protection. We will see related development in the upcoming slides. And then Supreme Court also urged the Union government to enact the law recognizing paternity leave as the social security benefit, right? So this is the first quick update of the day. Now we will see the second quick update of the day. And what is the second quick update? That is the Ladakh magnetic arc. What is the Ladakh magnetic arc? So scientists have decoded the evolution of the Ladakh magnetic arc in the northwest Himalayas, right? So we'll see about it. So it is the belt of igneous rocks and the long extinct volcanic system located in the Trans Himalayas that acts as the 130 million years record of the plate tectonics, right? That is the one thing. It documents the entire process of subduction, maturation, and the eventual collision between the Indian and the Eurasian plates. So Indian plate and this was the Eurasian plate actually collided, and there was a Tethys Sea between that, and this collision have created the subduction, and then there was the magma which might have come above, and there was volcanic activities. So that is the volcanic arc which have been formed near the Ladakh magnetic arc, right? Magmatic arc. So this is the development, and this might be the geographical phenomena which have led to this creation, right? So present Ladakh region lays above the Neo Tethys Ocean, and below the ocean, as we already discussed, giant slabs of earth crust slowly plunge into the mantle in a process known as subduction, leading to the formation of the Ladakh magmatic arc. So what happens if the one plate and second plate, when they collide, and when one plate is heavier, it may subducted under the another plate, and it may lead to the magmatic lava eruption, right? So this is all about the Ladakh magmatic arc. Now we will see the next quick update of the day, and the next quick update of the day is the MC Mehta case. As I already told you, there was the Article 21 and its ambit have been widened over the period of time. One of the best example is MC Mehta case. Supreme Court have accepted that the clean environment is the fundamental right under the Article 21, that is the right to life, right? So what is the development? So Supreme Court have formally disposed of the landmark 1985 PIL filed by the environmentalist MC Mehta. That is the development. Now we'll see about this case and other cases related to environmental conservation. So MC Mehta case, Supreme Court recognized that the principle of absolute liability and applied doctrine of public trust on the natural resources. That is the one thing. Then it also led to the lead-free petrol in India, coastal management plans in the state, shifting of the stone crushers out of the Delhi, etc., etc. So there is large amount of environmental related impact are there due to the MC Mehta case. Very important, you can quote such kind of cases in your answers to get good marks. That is the one thing. Other landmark environmental cases. So what are the other landmark environmental cases? Firstly, TN Godavaram, and this case is from the 1995, and it expanded the definition of the forest land to include all areas recorded as the forest in government records regardless of the ownership, and that is why it led to the more forest cover in India, because these lands were actually get forested as definition was increased, right? Then there is Vellore Citizens Welfare Forum case 1996, and it recognized the precautionary principle and the polluter pays principle as essential feature of the Indian environmental law. So who is the polluter? Who that person or that organization or that company will pay for it, right? And then SP Muthuraman case, that is 2025, and SC declare post facto or the retrospective environmental clearances illegal. So that post facto clearances can also be illegal, right? So this is about the MC Mehta case. Now we'll see the next quick update, and next quick update is horticulture crops. What is the development? So Ministry of Agriculture released the final 2024-2025 horticulture estimate. What is the horticulture? So horticulture are the agriculture where various crops, high yielding crops or the monetary crops such as flowers, fruits, etc. are grown, right? So this is the horticulture. And what are the key highlights? Please remember that all this data is not very important. Please remember 2-3 facts of this data so you can replicate it in an answer. Not all the data is important. So it is saying that the total horticulture crop area grew from 290 lakh hectares in 2023-24 to around 3 lakh hectares in 2024-2025. That is the one thing. Total crop production climbed from 3547 lakh tons to 3707 lakh tons, and 2024-25 fruit production rose by 4.13%. Please remember this percentage only, right? And driven by the gains in banana, mango, then mandarin, papaya, guava, watermelon, and jackfruits. Like, and what about the vegetables? So vegetable production is estimated up to by 5.11%, right? And this data is not very important. And with rise in the onion, potato, green chilies, cauliflower, cabbage, brinjal, etc. So this is the quick update. Now we'll see the next quick update of the day. So next quick update of the day is Shah gas field. Shah gas field, and what is the development? So operation at UAE's Shah gas field suspended after the drone attack over it, right? So there are various ports which are in news and various gas fields are in news. Please remember where they are situated and under which country. The question can be asked related to it. So Shah gas field is of the UAE, right? So what is about the Shah gas field? So location is in UAE near the border with the Saudi Arabia, and type one of the world's largest SAR gas fields. So what is the SAR gas? So gas which have very high hydrogen sulfide content, and when hydrogen sulfide is very high, there is high concentration of sulfate, and also there is very corrosive in nature. So these kind of gases are very corrosive in nature, and sulfur is very high in them, and then they are very important for the production of natural gas and sulfur, because the sulfur is in the high concentration. So this is about the Shah gas field. Now we'll see the next quick update, and the next quick update is about the National Quantum Mission. What is the development? So government have cleared 23 institutions to set up the quantum labs under the National Quantum Mission. Alright. So now we'll see about the National Quantum Mission, and the overview is that National Quantum Mission was launched by the Department of Science and Technology for the period of 2023 to 2031. Please remember this period, to make India a global leader in the quantum technologies. What is the quantum technology? As we already discussed, or as we know, that in general computers, the code is written in the 0 and 1, right? In the quantum, it can be 3 direction, and at one time there can be multiple possibilities of 0 and 1 and 0 at various points. So there can be higher speed and the storage of the machines or the quantum computers, right? And what is the aim? So aim is to seed, nurture and scale up the scientific industrial R&D and create the vibrant ecosystem for the quantum technology in India. And what are the mission objectives? So establishing a secure and high bandwidth communication infrastructure spanning 2000 kilometers. So that is the one aspect. And then developing quantum computers with the processing capacity of 500 to 1000 qubits, unlocking the immense computational capabilities, etc. Right? So these are the important aspect of the National Quantum Mission. Now we'll see the next quick update of the day. And next quick update of the day is about the coconut. What is the development? So Union Budget announced the coconut promotion scheme aimed at rejuvenating old non-productive coconut gardens and expanding the cultivation along the coastal areas. Now we will see coconut as the crop. So India is the world's largest producer of coconuts, contributing to nearly 30% of the global coconut production. Please remember that India is the largest, right? Then what are the ideal condition for the coconut cultivation? So latitude is between 23 degrees north and south of the equator in the tropical and the hot climate. So it is the tropical plant. Then what is the altitude? So grows from the sea level up to 600 meters. And what is the ideal temperature? So it should be from 20 degrees to 32 degrees Celsius, right? And what is the rainfall requirement? So 1000 to 2500 millimeter annually. So it requires the high rainfall. And what is the soil type? Well drained, sandy, loamy, laterite and coastal alluvial soil, right? So this is this soil. And who are the major producers in India? So Kerala, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, right, in descending order. So this is about the coconut as the crop. Now we'll see the next quick update of the day. And next quick update of the day is about white fat and the brown fat. What is the development? So recently in news, fat cells, both white and brown fat, can become promising target for future weight loss therapies as they burn energy to make the heat. Now we'll see about the white and brown fat, right? So white fat is the most abundant fat in the adults and the brown fat is mainly found in the neck and upper chest, right? And primary function is that white fat store the energy in the form of triglycerides, right? And brown fat burns energy and dissipate calories, converts chemical energy into heat, right? So this is about the brown fat. Now we'll see about the white fat. White fat acts as the powerful endocrine organ, releasing the hormones like leptin, and it is to reduce the appetite, and adiponectin to regulate the insulin and the blood sugar, right? And then brown fat is naturally triggered by the brain upon exposure to cold temperatures to generate heat, right? So brown fat is naturally triggered when there is cold temperature. So this is about the brown fat and the white fat, right? So this is all about the today's news today. And to read more about the news and to solve quizzes, you can visit our digital current affairs portal, where you can also read various monthly articles and the various documents such as PT365 document, which will be very helpful for your examination and preparation. So this is all for the day. Thank you. Happy learning.